We'll start with Michael Lev, Arizona Daily Star.
Hey there.
Michael, how's it going, man?
It's going pretty well. How did this opportunity come about for you to come to Tucson?
Well, I had known Coach Fish through a variety of different conversations. Ultimately with some tight ends going to the NFL. He had been in the NFL, as a quarterback coach at a variety of different spots. And we'd have a yearly conversation. The most important piece of this one was Coach Jimmy Doherty. Coach Doherty was a coach of mine when I was in college at the University of San Diego. And he was one of the more important reasons of being able to go up to the University of Washington and bringing me up there in my opportunity to start as a graduate assistant. So I'd known Coach Doherty for a really long time, essentially like a brother of mine, and was really looking forward for the opportunity to be able to work with him and Coach Carroll as well.
Besides those relationships, what else appealed to you about this opportunity?
Well, it's one of the things that you're starting to see about this program is really this whole movement of being personal, everything being personal. And to me, growing up in Oceanside, California, and having community members such as Joe Salavea and Pulu Pumele, and knowing the legacy, they're in the West Coast, coach that hadn't been influenced by Coach Tomey in some way, shape, or form. But just seeing the importance of this program, the education that those individuals got here, and ultimately seeing their standing in the community is always something that's been a huge, huge form of, admiration for me, and really being able to make it a personal deal to be able to try and add to that legacy for others, and especially being able to coach, a guy like Donovan that's already here, that's from, the same city. It was just an unbelievable opportunity that I was really looking forward to.
Thank you.
Next question, Jay Gonzalez, Fox Sports 1450.
How you doing, Coach? So those of us who have been watching Arizona football for a lot of years, and every year we hear, okay, we're going to use the tight end this year. And probably you have to go all the way back to Gronk to find a time that they really did use the tight end because they had such a talent that they had to. Convince me that the tight end is going to be you're going to make the tight end a big part of this offense. And, you got a guy like Bryce Wolma who's coming back. How much of a role will that position have in the offense coming up?
Well, I think, the commitment, Jay, quite honestly starts with having an actual position coach. When you have, just my position, you get to install, you get to mold, you get to influence, not only the athletic side of that one, but being able to talk to them on a daily basis about academics and issues that are going on in their life. You get a model of consistency. And I think ultimately sometimes tight ends in a variety of different ways kind of get thrown between the offensive line. They get thrown in receiver rooms. There's just not a consistent work at the nuances of truly being a part of the offensive line and knowing exactly why we're doing things and how they're supposed to look. Being an extension of the passing game and knowing that in the red zone or in third downs or contested catches and being able to utilize, the length that the Wolma kid has or Stacy out there in space, being able to use Zach to be able to kind of bring those big time catches in big time moments. And that's ultimately my goal and my hope is just being that consistent voice of making sure that we are, the conduit between the offensive line, the quarterback, and the wide receiver core, and being able to utilize this. And ultimately, you just look at Coach Fish and Coach Doherty and Coach Carroll, the importance of a tight end with those guys' offenses and how they've developed those guys with Jake Butt at Michigan or Caleb Wilson at UCLA. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I've had some decent success at developing some tight ends as well, Jay.
After the Washington game, Bryce Wolma was kind of envious of how much the tight end was in play in the Washington game. He killed Arizona. Have you had that conversation with him and to kind of reassure him that's a possibility for him down the road?
Well, I think, tight ends are, again, an unbelievable position to be able to play because it's the ultimate gift to the team. Some games are going to be 10 catches for 100+ yards and a couple touchdowns. And ultimately, some games you may get 5 targets, you may get 3 targets, and you have to be an unbelievable part of pass protection and run blocking. It's really the commitment to whatever is being asked of you. You have to do it to the best of your ability. Yes, we are absolutely going to be able to utilize his ability in the pass game and be able to push the ball down the football field. But I think it's, ultimately just taking pride in whatever is asked, however that may be, for the success of our offense, special teams, however that scenario plays out.
Right. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Next question, Rich Herrera, Wildcats Radio 1290.
Good morning. When the coaching staff was being put together, a lot of the fans around Tucson warmly remember Dick Tomey, and they talked about the Polynesian connection. The Dick Tomey was able to bring that connection from Hawaii, then here to Tucson, Arizona. And you look around all over the Pac-12, you look around high school football, modern day, St. John Bosco had DJ Ugalele, who's at Clemson. You went to El Camino, Oceanside, Cathedral, modern day. All those schools have that big poly connection. How important is that going to be able to go find those kids and bring them to Tucson the way that Dick Tomey was able to?
Well, I think it's one of the big time emphasis just in terms of where we want to make sure that we're putting our footprint in terms of recruiting. I think it's ultimately one of those appealing things about this job is just being able to build that culture. And ultimately was probably one of the biggest deciding factors of being really excited to come down here and work with Coach Fish is he embodies a lot of the values that are important to our culture, is hard work, really making sure that we ultimately are trying to sacrifice for the greater good of family. And, again, you have such big time, individuals to be able to go emulate, like I was mentioning a little bit earlier, that it really kind of, it's exciting. It's exciting to be able to try and bring those type of kids because of, again, how much they're making an input, not only on college football and high school football, like the schools that you were mentioning, but ultimately the impact that Polynesian players are having in the NFL as well.
How big is that legacy of Arizona football within the Polynesian community today? You're in Washington. There's a lot of Polynesian kids up there, USC, UCLA. There's been a lot of success. So how big is that original Arizona legacy that Dick Tomey had to open up that pipeline to the Pac-12?
Well, I think it's about creating awareness of how big that is right now and really making sure that that's a huge emphasis that ultimately our whole entire staff is going to be able to bring back because it's, you know what you're going to get out of young Polynesian kids. You're going to get kids that work hard, that ultimately are going to remain super humble and are going to be longstanding leaders in their own individual communities.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Next question, Alec White, Arizona Daily Star.
Hey, Coach, what did you take away from your time at Washington that made that program so successful?
My biggest takeaway ultimately was being able to work for a man like Chris Peterson, I think was a life-changing experience. And it was one of those things where it was ultimately the connection and the relationships that you were able to build outside the sport of football. Really making sure that my position group personally was a close-knit family and having a lot of hard conversations at all times and maybe talking about things that are, either taboo or ultimately kind of being able to build this level of trust within your position room. But that was, ultimately to me, probably the biggest takeaway from that time period. And a man that I can honestly say has changed my life.
And then building on that, how do you take what you learned during that time at Washington and then apply it to this new program that you're at here with Arizona?
Well, I think it's being able to utilize those principles that Coach Pete was talking about and apply them to my own family. As I become, I've got a 2-year-old son. My wife, I have no idea why she likes me, but I just continue to not ask, why, just continue to creep my butt off on that end. And we're expecting a baby girl, but being able to utilize a lot of those principles and a lot of those things within my own family unit. And the awesome part about it is, Coach Tomey emphasized those same sort of principles. And I think that's, something that Coach Fish is definitely going to bring back to this program, and ultimately something that the tight ends are going to know about here at the University of Arizona.
Next question, Jordan Ham, Sports 360 AZ.
Hey, Coach, thanks for doing this. When you were at Washington, they recruited Arizona very well. When you're at UNLV, you were able to get a tight end out of Arizona. Can you just talk about the talent pool within the state and how this staff is going to be able to prioritize that?
Sure. There is damn good football in the state of Arizona. And I think one of the biggest things for us is, like Coach Fish was talking about, was building the gate around it, but ultimately it's being able to consistently and meticulously recruit at all times, and not just making scholarship offers and then letting kids kind of, you don't hear from them for a while. What happened to the staff at the University of Arizona? It's that constant communication with parents, with kids, with coaches, letting them know exactly where we're at just in terms of the state of the program and how we're going to make sure that we get this better. And then ultimately is fostering those relationships. But it's important to me. I've always loved recruiting the state of Arizona. I mean, at the end of the day, guys, where else do you get 50 to 60 degree weather in the middle of January?
And when, you can't be on campuses right now, you can't have students coming on campus. How are you trying to build those relationships with the coaches right now, or further enhance those ones that you might already have?
Jordan, you trying to give away all the secrets already on this thing, man? Like I said, it's getting creative, whether it's FaceTimes, whether it's Zoom calls, daily text messages, whatever is important to the players, the coaches. It's going to make sure that we make it important to us, but also show them, when it's important to them, being able to show them what the University of Arizona provides, and where that starts to meet in the middle is when you start to see a lot of special stuff in terms of the world of recruiting.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Next question, Troy Hutchison, All Sports Tucson.
So with, experience at Washington, you've seen the tight end used there at big time programs in college football. NFL, you see the tight end used every day. Why do you think it is that programs like Arizona in the past have gone away from the tight end? It seems like a critical position for a lot of big time programs.
Yeah, Troy, it's probably not my best place to be able to speculate, why it wasn't important to them. I just know what it allows you to do. It makes you different. It makes you unique. When you have a 6'4" to 6'6" individual running down the football field that's able to outrun linebackers and be able to body up on safeties, it makes a unique, distinct advantage. It's hard to cover gaps. You get to extend edges. And ultimately what I love about the tight end position is arguably, beside from the quarterback, it's the hardest position to play in football. Because you are an offensive lineman, but you're also a receiver. And you need to know, how to manipulate zones and where to be able to fit things. And, that's why it's such a unique challenge that I'm always so passionate about, because it is the ultimate position on the offensive side of football. And I believe that wholeheartedly.
Next question, we'll go back to Michael Lev.
Jordan, you referenced all the things that you learned from Coach Peterson. It was Coach Harbaugh, I guess, who gave you your start in the business. What did you learn from him?
Yes, I've been extremely fortunate to have, a big time group of coaches to be able to influence me, starting with my own dad, who was a football coach for 40 years, to my Uncle Joe, who was a GM and coaching in the NFL. I was very fortunate to be coached by Jim Harbaugh in college. He gave me my first shot at Stanford. From Victor Santa Cruz at Azusa Pacific to Steve Sarkisian to Chris Peterson. The list goes on. You take a little bit of everything, but what Coach Harbaugh gave me that stands out of all those, ultimately was an unadulterated passion for attacking the day. An enthusiasm unknown to mankind is still something that sticks out in the forefront of my mind from when I was a 17, 18-year-old punk running at the University of San Diego. But that was, one thing that I'll always be thankful for him. that experience, and something that always stands out about Coach.
Are you going to be involved in special teams here?
I am going to split them with Coach Dudzinski. How exactly that's going to go down is still to be determined, and probably a decent question for Coach Fish. But special teams are a huge passion of mine, and I'm super excited to get started with the guys on that regard.
Thank you.
Next question, Justin Spears.
Coach, is there a coach on the staff that you've had maybe a relationship with prior to Arizona, and what are you looking forward to working with this staff?
Well, every single one of the guys brings an unbelievable amount of juice. I'm sure, at the end of the day, Coach Hundley and Coach Cecil had every single one of you guys ready to strap on a helmet, be able to go work downhill. Coach Brown, just, his ability to motivate is contagious. It's unbelievable. Coach Walker, just his wealth of experience. I think you start to see that about our staff, is the connections that they have, whether it be in the NFL, whether it be in college football. It's just an unbelievable wealth of knowledge. But more specifically is, again, Coach Jimmy Doherty is essentially been like a brother, has really given me an opportunity to be able to come with them at a couple different places. And now that we're a little bit older, I'm really looking forward to working with him again.
And also being from the Oceanside area / San Diego area, Chuck Cecil is a very prominent name around that area. Just what was your perception of Coach Cecil prior to coaching at Arizona?
Well, it kind of started with Coach being from Hanford in Central California initially, growing up there and recruiting the Central Valley. It's a name that always comes up, especially in that area. But with a storied program like Helix and just the toughness and the grit that exudes out of them, I think is something that's going to be unbelievable for a lot of our players, whether it be on defense, but I think that's going to rub off on offense and more importantly on special teams as well. He's just a tough dude. And you can tell, especially by him and Coach Hundley, just the passion that they have for this place, and ultimately the ability of this place that molded them and changed their lives. And you can tell it just comes right out. And we're so happy to be a part of that as well.
And did you say you knew Donovan Lai before you came to Arizona, or you just know that he's from Oceanside?
You didn't know that all Polynesian guys are related? Every single one of us?
I guess, yeah.
Donovan grew up in the same city. My parents have lived in the city of Oceanside, with both of my grandfathers being former Marines stationed at Camp Pendleton. Ultimately, they decided that weather was pretty good, so they weren't ever leaving again. But growing up there, you always keep tabs on the younger generation of the young Polynesian players, whether it be, your own family, which is also kind of a segue. Shout out to Coach Barnes, and I'm rooting for you, even though the starting point guard at Oregon is ultimately one of my family members. But yeah, you always keep tabs on where guys are going from that city. It is a close-knit community. And you are always pulling for the next generation of young Poly kids and just kids in general coming out of that city to be able to go succeed.
And have you had a chance to talk with him since taking the job?
Yeah, I made sure that I texted him, and he was one of the first guys that came up to the office. It was awesome, to be able to connect, to talk about some of the things that he had been recently going through, just in terms of some family issues and a little bit of stuff on that regard. But ultimately, just to be able to let him know that he had a place outside of Coach Carroll's office just to talk and be able to really figure out, not just the game of football, but the game of life.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Coach.
Absolutely. Thank you.